Hi guys, as we know, GB News is a joke channel, but the relentless scapegoating isn't a laughing matter. The far right like to point to social declines such as crime, dirty streets, lack of housing, and poor quality of life, and instead of placing the blame where it's deserved, the government, they point the finger at immigrants. Someone called Kezia Noble appeared on GB News where she tapped into nostalgia for the 90s, where she says there wasn't, and I quote, uncontrolled immigration. The host, of course, misrepresents people who disagree with this position. A very strange and dangerous discussion. Have a listen.
It's quite a lot.
The reason why they're doing this is because the government want to silence the people in this country who have had enough of mass uncontrolled immigration. Europe want mass immigration. The West want it. Canada, Australia. And people are starting to speak out. And when they saw those votes coming in for the Reform Party, they got scared. They got worried. And now they're doing everything to silence us.
Okay, I don't know who us is, but of course people are concerned, politicians are concerned, and people on the left are concerned when Nigel Farage's party win a significant amount of the vote, because they're not actually in the business of providing solutions to problems. I keep saying this is about sniping from the sidelines. Nigel Farage is not interested in stopping the boats. He's interested in manipulating the public. We've seen it before. We saw it with Brexit, convincing people via lies to vote against their own interests. They keep banging on about freedom of expression, free speech, but these are the same people who want Britain to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, which protects free speech.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here. They'll forget dogs. That's just the first step. They'll just...
Are they going to move on to cows?
No, they'll just immediately arrest people and sentence them at some point because they don't like what's happening. People are getting fed up with this mass uncontrolled immigration.
But I mean, this is your opinion. Obviously, there are people out there who would say we need mass uncontrolled immigration. But
who is saying this? We call this a straw man fallacy, where he's pretending that somebody's holding a position and then he's attacking that position. Who's saying we need mass uncontrolled immigration? People are saying we need immigration. In Europe, we need immigration. We have a population that is getting older. We have a population that's getting smaller. Fewer people are having children, and the population is getting older. So we need carers, for example, to look after the elderly, but we also need people to pay into the pension pot. So we need immigration. If we're having fewer children, and we want to maintain a standard of living, then we need people to pay in. We need people arriving to work. That's the reality. You know, racists don't like that. Xenophobes don't like that. But that's the reality.
because, for example, if you're a landlord, it pushes up rental prices.
Or if you're,
or if you've got a business, then
yes.
you can have cheap workers for your business, and it destroys the power of the unions. Destroys
but our quality of life is getting worse as a result. I don't care about GDP. Our quality of life is getting worse. I grew up in the 90s and 80s. There was no waiting lists for anything. You could get a parking space, you could get on the housing market, your child could get into the local school.
I find it really strange she went to parking spaces first. Okay, that's really strange. This is about nostalgia. This is about cherry picking. Look how great things were back in the 1990s. You know, if you go back to the 1990s, people were saying, oh, look how wonderful things were back in the 1960s or the 1950s. This is about nostalgia. It's about cherry picking, looking at positive things back in the past. We do it all the time. But why were things better? Because you had governments that understood that if they don't improve people's quality of life, they're going to be kicked out. But what happened recently over the last number of decades, but back in the 1990s, they were blaming all social problems on single mothers. They just moved on to a new scapegoat. Now it's immigrants. Oh, look at how bad things are going. Don't look at the government, who have the power and the resources to actually change things. No, let's blame people, foreigners, because we hate the other. Blame foreigners who have no money, no power, no resources, no influence. It's convenient. But never blame the people who actually have the power to build houses, to improve the healthcare system, to improve people's quality of life.
The quality of life has deteriorated. When I ask people, what has mass immigration done for you? They really struggle. They say GDP. Of course, landlords, property developers have made a lot of money from it, but they are in the minority. The vast majority of people, their quality of life has eroded.
Yeah.
So what she did here is very clever, maybe, or very cynical. She said to people, how has mass immigration, mass uncontrolled immigration improved your life? It's a very loaded question. But because people can't answer that question, they can't say, well, it's actually improved my life. Mass uncontrolled immigration. If you were to ask people, do you think the NHS should have doctors and nurses from abroad if they can't find them in the local area? Most people, most reasonable people would say, yes, we need immigration. But what the far right do is they say, well, look at all these immigrants coming in. They're not working. They're living off the state. They're getting involved in crime. And what they do is they use a small percentage and then expand that to the majority. The majority of people who are coming to work in Britain are working. They can't live off the state because in many cases they don't have access to benefits. And in other cases, they don't want to be on benefits. They want to work. So if they can't get a job by legal means, they'll do it through the black economy. This is a problem, but who is ultimately responsible for this? It's the government. This is dangerous because everyone is looking around and expecting things to improve. New government in place, we're expecting the NHS to improve, expecting more housing, expecting all of these things. And if the government doesn't succeed, the government will be blamed, of course. But the likes of Nigel Farage and others will say, well, the problem, yes, is the government, but the core problem is immigration. There are too many people coming in. Vote for us and we'll stop that. But as I keep saying, Nigel Farage and others are not concerned about housing, the NHS waiting list. They just want to use it as a tool. And we have tools like this on GB News who continue to push that narrative. Not the government's fault, it's immigrants' fault. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.